welcome gentlemen around the world to the Gentleman's Lounge. I'm Peyton, and I'm your host of the Gentleman's Handbook podcast. And today I have a very special guest with me, James. He simply likes to be called James, but I would like to put some more respect on his name. So please welcome a special guest that I have with me today, James Carter. James Carter is Mr. Carter to me because I have a lot of respect for a lot of things he's done. Mr. Carter has tried the verdict, settled, and have been associated with multiple high-value cases ranging from $1 million to more than $70 million. And Grambling State University, which is my alma mater, awarded him an honorary doctorate of laws. He was elected as the second African-American to serve as a New Orleans City Councilman in District C on the first New Orleans City Council seated after the storm in 2006. As the chairman of the newly created City Council Criminal Justice Committee, he played the lead legislative criminal justice reform role in establishing the first city charter mandated division of the Independent Police Monitor, or the IPM. The IPM was created to protect citizens from police brutality and misconduct. He also ushered in the Vera Institute of Justice Alternatives to Incarceration Initiative, ceasefire program, Court Watch NOLA, and legal protections for Mardi Gras Indians. And I would like to welcome Mr. James Carter. Do you have anything to say to people?
Well, I'm so grateful and proud to be here to be a part of the Gentleman's Lounge. I love that name. I love what it represents. I love what it implies. And so I'm honored that you would want to ask me questions.
Well, the honor is all mine. I wanted to get started, ask you a few questions. And the first question I kind of wanted to ask you was, where are you from and what was your childhood like?
I am from New Orleans, Louisiana, and I was born in 1969.
Okay.
First nestled on Vallon Street for 7 months, and then I moved to the 8th Ward on Spain Street, 3112 Spain Street. And I grew up with my mom and my dad. My dad died at the age of 78 about a year and a half ago. But my mom still lives. She's a 79-year-old vibrant lady. And if I lived 1,000 years, I could not thank God enough for the foundation that my parents gave me, because it's through that foundation that everyone else who's done something with me to make me the man I am today, it was predicated upon that foundation, so I'm very grateful. My dad was a no-nonsense sort of brother. He didn't tolerate excuses. He held us up to be responsible. My mom was the nurturer, the intellectual force and visionary behind putting the matrix together that I followed to become the person I am today in terms of opportunities and experiences and exposure. And just a brilliant lady, did not have formal education, either one of them. They were entrepreneurs, both of them. My mom was a beautician, had a little beauty shop, which is where I actually learned my debate skills with her customers. Yeah. And my dad just was a very disciplined guy who created a trucking company called Jerome's Enterprises, which is my middle name, which was a dump trucking company that dealt with the earth moving of spillway dirt, sand, and shells. So he was a nation builder, if you will, from that perspective. And so the combination of those two giants caused me to be what I am today. And if I were 10%, or if I am 10% of what my daddy was, I would be a great man.
Well, that's truly phenomenal. A lot of times, you see today the family's a lot more downplayed, and the importance of the family is seen as not important. And I think that for your parents to be able to accomplish those sorts of things, especially in those times, to push themselves to be great, no matter what the circumstances were, I'm sure that taught you a lot of things. It's inspiring me just hearing the story, about how your dad formed his own company and your mom had her own business. Those kind of thought patterns people are just getting to today, just starting to think about being entrepreneurs. And, you had that foundation back then that says a lot about where you come from. And then I'm not surprised that you turned out the way that you are.
Well, thank you. Well, two of the predicates or foundational philosophies that my parents sort of drove into my head. One is my daddy used to say, my nickname is Roni, by the way, right? Yeah. He said, Roni. He said, if you gave me the same book, I can compete with anybody in the world. He used to tell me that as a little boy. Just give me the same book. You give a person from China that book, you give somebody from Russia that book, from Africa, and give me the same book, I will compete with anybody in the world. And my mom used to say that no matter how good someone is, they damn sure ain't no better than you.
Wow. That kinds of plays in the video I made maybe a month ago or so called Killer Instinct, something my dad taught me. It's like, you always have to prove to me that you could beat me. It might be not my day to day, but tomorrow's a new day to prove that you have to prove again that you could beat me.
As long as you live and you win it.
Yeah. And that's crazy, as long as you give me the same book that you have, I can compete.
I can compete.
You give me basically don't give me that opportunity because I'm gonna compete regardless of not whether you give me to me or not.
Right.
But if you give me equal footing, I'm gonna win.
Anybody in the world.
I can really appreciate that. That's some good advice to take. So what kind of pushed you into law?
Well, I fell into the mode again of my parents. I watched my parents actually care for people, care for the elderly. Be kind to children. If it didn't have to be their children.
Yeah.
I saw my dad take care of his parents when they were ill and elderly. I saw my mom do good and stand up and have certain opinions about racial issues that she experienced and that affected her. My dad participated, I found out later, in protests when he was a young man. I found that to be interesting. But based upon that sort of goodness and attraction to helping individuals solve problems that were ailing them in a multiplicity of areas, it came to me in that sense. And so the skill set that I developed over the years, those my natural attributes as well as my evolutionary attributes in terms of communications, etc. My mom was a big thing about the way you spoke. She wasn't formally educated, but she did not tolerate certain sort of oratorical mishaps in one's dialogue. And I kind of grew into this concern for human beings. And I had a lot of people, especially in the educational construct, in the recreational construct, who I saw helping people purely, not without pretense, without looking for something in return. And so I didn't pop out of a toaster. So I went through that experience at McDonald 35 Senior High School. I graduated from NOCA, where I studied theater. Then I went on to Howard University, where is the mecca of Black intellectual stimulation and strategies to help our people. From there, I went on to Howard University School of Law, which is the quintessential school relative to civil rights and activism. And by being bred in that sort of environment, being taught by Sensei Kevin Smith, martial arts, and a plug for his book, Sensei. It's a great look. Everybody, you got to get this book and you got to watch it as it continues to evolve into higher and higher heights relative to how that book is going to end up. But I ended up sort of carrying on that tradition in my own way based upon my own skill sets, my own intuitions, etc. And so by that training and that type of backdrop and having this this awareness in retrospect, like I was saying before, that I grew up in a neighborhood at 3112 Spain Street and it flooded. But just a few blocks away where the people did not have the same skin color that I had, it didn't flood. Then in the neighborhood I was in a section I was in on 3112 Spain Street, there was an incinerator a few blocks away, and we can smell the odor from the incinerator, which couldn't be good for us. Then there was a train track not too far away.
Noise pollution.
And a train derailed when I was in college and caught flames, and folks had to go through that. And so some environmental injustices, some realizations as I got older, and awareness intellectually caused me to want to go to law school and go to a law school that had a history of civil rights. Charles Hamilton Houston, who was the great architect of the strategy behind the 1954 decision in Brown v. Board of Education, who was the mentor of Thurgood Marshall, the great legendary dean of Howard University School of Law, said a lawyer is either a social engineer or a parasite on society. We are inculcated with that at Howard University. A.P. Turo attended Howard University, etc. So we are ingrained with this idea that our educational opportunities are not for us alone. It is to be used not only to serve our immediate families, but to uplift a people who have been wronged in the society. Yolande Dillon, who was my high school counselor, Miss Yolande Dillon, who's my high school counselor, who I still keep in touch with to this day. She's in her 80s now. She lives in Houston, Texas. She used to say, look, I'm going to help you to get to these points. And she's the one who got me into Howard University after the bell had rung back in 1987. She used to say, I'm going to help you, but you have a responsibility. You got to promise me one thing. You are going to give back. You got to give back. You cannot just keep this knowledge, keep these opportunities to yourself. So that this idea about helping through the law and helping individuals to evolve to higher heights is basically ingrained into the very culture by which I was raised. And that's what brings me to what I am today as a lawyer who's about social engineering.
I mean, the way you put it, I mean, I'm sure, a lot of lawyers make a lot of money. And you're right, parasites are, engineers for change. I remember going to a environmental racism conference down here in New Orleans while I was in college, and I learned about those things. Obviously knew about the situation in Baton Rouge. They called Cancer Alley,
right.
Things like that. I learned about noise pollution. I learned about different areas that a lot of black neighborhoods find themselves in are often polluted, underdeveloped. Last to get the roads fixed. We know we have a road problem in New Orleans. And I think that for you to, do the things that you do and choose to do those things, because it's difficult. It's difficult to help the community at times. And it seems that, in my time, I noticed that it's a lot less families, it's individuals. And sometimes you find it difficult to actually work with those individuals for the betterment of their own community.
Right.
So my next question is, I see that you've been a staple of the community, and I think you kind of talked about why serving the community is so important to you, but because of your background and everything like that. But what would you say is the importance of individuals who do have the know-how to come back and help the community in ways in which they can be able to help themselves, not to come back to the community and give your own money per se, because I don't think that's helpful, right? For you to come back and just throw your own money on a situation, but to come back to educate people to help themselves to grow out of a situation.
Well, I think it's very important. Dr. King said the black man must help the white man and the white man must help the black man, because we are all bound together in a single garment of destiny, right? And so whether it's the white man, black man helping himself, it's important because we're all bound in a single garment of destiny. It does not matter to the robber whether or not you came from some elite community as you're driving down the street and you're carjacked. Right? They don't know where you came from. All they know is that there's an opportunity there. And for those who think that they are in safe environments and it doesn't matter, the situation will come to them, right? So it's important to go into the communities and make sure from a selfish perspective, for your own survival, number one. But from a general perspective, we are trained and we are taught from a theological perspective that we must help the despised, the rejected, the unloved, the unwanted. When you look at the story of the Good Samaritan, the priest and the Levi passed by. It was the man who, the Good Samaritan poured oil in the wound of the person that was robbed, if you will. And so it tells us that we have a responsibility to help our brother and our sisters, etc. When you see a person wounded for a variety of situations, to pour oil in their wounds to lift them up. So theologically, it's a mandate. Educationally, it's a mandate, and just from a self-preservational perspective, it's a mandate. But you're right. You want to teach a man or a woman how to fend for themselves. That's the thing that's so important. Teach them how to fend for themselves and fish for themselves, so that they won't need to lean on you. They can lean on themselves. And when they know their full human potential, they will understand that that's something that's very much in their reach and in their grasp.
I think it's important to teach people to lean on themselves, because then they can turn around and lift up their community.
Absolutely.
I always say things like, a man needs to lead his home, and then he needs to go in his community and work with those in his community, and the strongest of him should then go to the region, and the strongest of that region should be national. I don't think you should be a leader, a black leader, because somebody put you on CNN and gave you opportunity to speak. I think you have to first put the proof in the pudding in your own home first. If your home is out of order, how can you possibly tell anybody else how to put their home in order? And I think that's very important. You're right, for self-preservation, I don't want nobody to carjack me when I'm at the gas pump.
Exactly.
You know? And I always say things like, you know, people need to clean their own community. If you see trash on the ground, pick it up. Don't put trash in your own community. You know, I think a lot of things start at home, and as I can see, like you spoke about, your upbringing obviously played a major role into who you are today. You know, the discipline that your father put into you, the no excuses, because life doesn't give you excuses.
Right.
You work in the law, obviously. You know, I've been on grand jury cases, and you know, people come in there and, you know, you see that they've been through this, they're orphaned, this, that, and the other. But when it's time for sentencing, the judge is like, hey, you know, I noticed that you didn't have a father in your home. I noticed that, you know, your mother was on drugs, so I'm going to cut you a break. No, the judge hits that gavel, boom, 25 to life.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's very important. And one of the greatest attributes we have, or the greatest value adds we have, is a gentleman named Kevin Smith, right? You were wise enough to interview him a couple of weeks ago, I guess it was, and he has a system, all right, disciplinary. I have personally found one of the most effective ways to change a mindset of a wayward child is through martial arts discipline training. And he is a master at that, right? He trained me, you know, he came to me and trained me with the discipline of martial arts. And people like Kevin Smith, people like Jerome Smith, who taught him, the great Jerome Smith, who taught me also, by the way. Some call him Big Doug, I call him Mr. Smith. But in any event, people like that who came about and added to the value add for me in my existence, I'm very grateful for. And I think that the world should take greater notice of these assets that we have. And oftentimes we have these assets in our midst and we don't realize or take proper advantage or listen attentively enough, you know. In Shakespeare's Othello, he talked about Desdemona listened to him with a greedy ear. The ear was greedy. Yeah. We should listen to these people with a greedy ear, because they have wisdom and understanding that can help us to evolve out of the circumstances that we're in.
Yeah. I think that's true. You know, I'm a younger guy, and
me too.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I think it's important, man, to really try to tap into the resources of others, because your parents just give you a foundation. But there's so many different avenues where you can learn wisdom and knowledge from. You could go and grab different people's understanding and kind of incorporate it into your own life. I'm a big proponent of that. You know, I see something I like, I kind of steal it, you know. Because, you know, your parents just do the best that they know how to do. And, you know, you can appreciate them for that. But and I'm going to steal some things from you. I'm going to be honest with you before it's all said and done.
Let's do it.
Yeah, and it was truly an honor interviewing Sensei Kevin. Sensei Kevin actually got me to interview with you, as you know, obviously. I'm just letting the people in the audience know, and he checks in on me and see how I'm doing and things like that. And, you know, I was very appreciative of that. So, you know, I didn't know him personally, but someone I knew actually introduced me to him, and he was happy to do an interview when he came down. And he said, hey, I want to help you expand and go further. And I really appreciated that. You know, it's more about him trying to pass along the knowledge, you know.
Yeah, he wrote a very, very beautiful book called Sensei, and that we all should read and take in, because it has life lessons and great experiential knowledge in it. And I think it's something that we can learn from. I am a high-end civil trial attorney by trade. What I did was took my skill set, my knowledge, and my thrust towards helping people to say that I want to represent them when catastrophic injuries and those type of things occur, when they need a representative who's going to fight for them from the heart, right? In Dark Tower, Idris Elba was the hitman, and that hitman or bounty hunter, whatever he was. He said he don't kill with his gun, he kills with his heart, right? Yeah. That's you know, a man that kills with his heart, that's a problem. You have a problem with it. People who fight with their heart and have really strong desires to succeed no matter what, right? I'm one of those type of people. So when I grab a hold of a matter that I believe in and representing individuals in that place, I will go to great lengths to make sure that we are successful in that vein. I am the managing partner of Cochran Trials and Mass Torts. which is the law firm's namesake is Johnny Cochran, who defended O.J. Simpson. You might be too young to remember.
I know Johnny Cochran. We're in the same fraternity, so I know Johnny Cochran.
There's only one fraternity, Omega Psi Phi. No, but I know your fraternity. But yeah, he was a Kappa, and great man from Shreveport, Louisiana. I'm the managing partner of Cochran Trials and Mass Tort. So what we do is we militate for justice in individuals who are aggrieved. I'm a double Howard University graduate. And really, really proud to be a part of the tradition as laid down by Johnny Cochran.
Yeah, I think, that's phenomenal. I mean, to have that sort of skill set, the kind of skill set you have, the kind of skill set Johnny Cochran had. I mean, he could have represented mob members, he could have represented dope boys, or whatever, and made millions and millions of dollars and just said, hey, I can sleep good at night. I'm just here to my job is to do what I got to do to make $1. And, you don't have to be a civil attorney. Obviously, you can do anything you want. You have that kind of knowledge, that kind of expertise, but you choose to help people. And like you said, from the heart, you choose that. And sometimes when you're a guy who has that kind of heart, it kind of chooses you. People choose you.
Right. That's right.
So my next question is, do you think that educating civilians on certain laws will help improve community function and promote growth?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. My wife, Renee Carter, is a 28-year retired educator, and she was the 2016 Middle School Principal of the Year for the state of Louisiana. She was on the cover of Edutopia magazine as one of the 5 principals who were hired in post-Katrina to help stand up the educational system in New Orleans post-Katrina. Well, she likes to say this, and I think she gets this in part from her mentor, a lady named Miss Mary Laurie. And what they would say from time to time, you hear them say this, that there's no really differential between people. The differential is opportunities, exposures, and experiences. Opportunities, exposures, and experiences. Through education, you get those opportunities, you get those exposures and those experiences, and those methodologies of learning through those processes is what you use to uplift the community. So education is extremely important to be able to equip individuals with the knowledge they need, the understanding they need to nation build.
I always say when I see things that go on with police brutality, obviously you were ahead of your time. Probably had people who did it before you as well, but you actually were on the ground in the trenches. You were not pretty much an armchair. You went out on Instagram and just posting videos, but you were actually in the trenches. I always say that, I think the mentality needs to be never again. Rather than showing, okay, this will happen again, say never again. Let me educate myself on the law so I can know how to combat different things. Because I've seen different times where if you know what you're talking about, the police won't try certain things with you. They say, oh, whoa, I need to go ahead and watch myself because I know that this person is equipped with the knowledge in order to take me down if something goes wrong, And, like I said, I think education is big. Not just from a formal education perspective, but just education in general. Like you said, your mother didn't have formal education, but she created an educational system and she passed it down to you.
Yeah, her expectations were great there. They had great expectations for us. There's some scholars who suggest that expectation is the biggest determinant. No matter where your situation is, where you came from, the expectations surrounding your achievement. What do I expect from you? With the Gentleman's Lounge, I expect excellence. You being a Graham fam, excellence. I'm also Graham fam because I got my honorary doctorate from there. So now I'm Graham fam also. And so that's a proud institution and a proud tradition. And the expectation is great. Those expectations spawns you to be creative and come up with this brilliant podcast that you're talking about here. You're talking about subjects that are extremely important to the survival of a people, and not only people of our race. I mean, other folks and other races and stuff. You see the issues going on relative to the family dynamic and how important it is, how important education is, etc. So, I think that the thrust that you're using, the dynamics that you're using are brilliant and they're timely and they're needed.
I appreciate the high praise. So I want to go into my next question. I know you said you were civil law. Basically, obviously, my audience is mostly laymen. Could you explain kind of difference between civil law and criminal law? Because I
Yeah.
heard, hearing about the Bill Cosby situation, it's like, you kind of hear about criminal law.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is he going to be indicted? Or I was listening to like Deshaun Watson, the football player, and it's like, okay, it's like he got accused of a sexual assault, but instead of going to a criminal trial, the woman almost wanted to just settle it in a civil trial.
Mm-hmm.
So could you explain the difference between criminal and civil law?
Well, the simple difference between criminal and civil law lies in criminal law means loss of freedom, and civil law typically means monetary, typically. Or in civil law, sometimes they want to prevent an individual from doing a particular thing or compel you to do a particular thing that's not in the realm of going to jail, staying in and out of jail.
Okay.
So criminal, jail, civil, typically monetary. It's a simple difference. So in the situation that you are expressing here with Deshaun Watson, oftentimes with people like Deshaun Watson who has deep pockets, presumably, there's an opportunity to file a civil lawsuit against him for the injuries caused by what that person allegedly did. And so they file civil lawsuits against him, just like in 1983 cases, which are cases dealing with police brutality and misconduct. That's the civil side of prosecution as opposed to the criminal side of bringing criminal charges against the officer in a situation like that. If those charges prevail, then that officer could possibly go to jail. On the civil side, they have to pay money.
Okay. So when it comes to a crime that took place, do you have to do a criminal case before you do? Does it need to precede a civil case? Or do you just say, hey, no criminal case, civil case?
It's according to when law enforcement engages a criminal process or a civil process is engaged. Oftentimes, though, if a criminal process is engaged first, then the criminal court will cause the civil matter to be what they call stayed, meaning stopped, until the criminal matter is resolved in some instances. Right now, I have a case in Shreveport, the Tommy McLaughlin case, where 4 officers were indicted for brutally beating my client, ultimately causing his death, right, on the criminal side. And we filed a civil 1983 action, which is a federal action, against the city of Shreveport, the 4 officers, the EMS/fire department, as well as the city of Shreveport. And so we filed that civil action, and right now they're going in a parallel course right now because no one filed a stay asking the civil portion of it to be stopped until the criminal matter is resolved.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure if you can actually go into, I guess, the intricacies of the case. Can you give me kind of a basic outline of what took place with that situation?
Well, it was 2000 and around April of 2020, and my client was having a psychotic episode. African American male in Shreveport. The family, on times before, called law enforcement to come and help to get him to a situation where he can receive the treatment that he so needed. Officers came out, they left him there, they decided not to take him. Not long after they left, the client, Mr. Tommy McLaughlin, left the resident still in a psychotic situation. The law enforcement officers saw him on one occasion. They didn't bring him in. They saw him again after a resident called law enforcement to say this man was acting erratic, and they had an incident at their home. So the people in the neighborhood saw he was having a psychotic episode. The law enforcement officer saw he was having a psychotic episode when they first entered the home of his relatives. And the individual who called allowed him to traverse their home while having a psychotic episode, and no one heard him. Law enforcement decided to engage him into a violent altercation, beating him, tasing him, hitting him with a stick, macing him, and then throwing him into the back of a car after being handcuffed and being pushed and thrown to the ground, punched in the face while handcuffed, put him in the back of the car, left him in the car for 48 minutes, and he died. Okay? The Cato Parish district attorney brought that matter before a grand jury. The grand jury came back with malfeasance in office of all 4 officers, as well as negligent homicide, which is rare, as you know. Criminal charges to be placed against officers. it was a situation where it should have been handled differently. They should not have brutally beaten him. They should have employed methodologies that dealt with an exigent circumstance when an individual's having a psychotic episode. He did not pose harm to them, but they beat him, 4 of them, beat him and left him to die. And that's the case that's going on right now in Shreveport.
Okay.
And I'm on the civil side of that case.
Okay. Yeah, I've actually been on the grand jury. I served for about 6 months, and I know that the reason that it's hard to come back with anything but the police's idea of what goes on, because they're the only ones who usually speak.
Right.
And you come back with a true bill or not a true bill, and it's like, well, it's like, this is what's going on. But then you hear from the detective, right? But you hear from no one else. You only hear the police's side, so it's only one side to take.
Well, apparently in this situation, there were various witnesses who were called. There were various individuals who were called outside of that, as well as experts to opine on proper police procedure and the violation of those procedures as it relates to our case. And therefore, the Cato Parish residents came back with and charged the officers with those four charges.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm glad, because being a police doesn't give you a license to hurt people, especially people who have mental issues. I work in mental health actually as my profession. So it's like you understand when people have different things going on, there's other ways to handle the situation. And for, I guess, 4 police officers to beat on one man, and violently handcuff him, tase him, and do those things, knowing they came out the first time, they should say, because I'm sure once they called him again, it probably was pretty much quickly. It's like, we just went there, we're going to go back. And then you
Same guy.
Same guy. So obviously.
They saw him 2 times before the final deadly encounter, which makes it even more insidious what happened there.
Yeah, it seems like they probably got upset, and it was like, you know what, I'm tired of coming back out there, I'm going to go ahead and make sure he act up again, kind of probably physically put hands on him. That's just ridiculous, I'm sure, the family's happy having a guy like you on the case, I got to that question. Let's see, I know you talked about earlier how you were influenced by a lot of great thinkers. My question is, did they influence your path in life? Did anybody in particular, like, some of those great thinkers influence your path as far as, the kind of law, like you said, that you practice in civil law?
Well, the single individual in history that influenced my trajectory was Paul Robeson. Paul Robeson, if you don't know who he is, please, I would encourage your listeners and your viewers to look into Paul Robeson. He was one of the greatest and most brilliant men to ever be born here in America. He was a lawyer, and he was a All-American football player. Went to Rutgers University, ended up attending Columbia for law school, and he worked on Wall Street for a minute in New York, et cetera, et cetera. But he ended up becoming a Shakespearean actor. He knew over 20 languages. He sung in various languages. Just an incredible guy. He was 6'3". He had a voice of God, and he was just a bad man, as we say.
He was a he could do everything.
No, he was a superhero.
Literally.
He literally was. And because he had gone to law school and he ended up fighting for human rights, he believed the artists should take a stand on social issues. Yeah. I ended up as a NOCA graduate, as a McDonald 35 graduate, whereby I studied theater. He was introduced to me by Miss Shalon Dillon, the lady I mentioned to you before, and said, look, she pulled me in the office when they said, you remind me of Paul Robeson. I said, well, who is that? So I started to study, and I said, oh man. And so my trajectory ended up in sort of a similar vein, in that I was in the performing arts, I was into theater, I ended up going to law school, I ended up using that training in politics, in that I was the first part of the first city council seated after Hurricane Katrina. Ended up being a criminal justice commissioner for the city, etc. So from a political perspective, I use oration. From a legal perspective, I use oration. From a grassroots perspective, in trying to move individuals from one point to another, utilizing those skills. And it sort of paralleled, in a sense, what Paul Robeson did. But moreover, there were multiple individuals who have influenced my trajectory towards community work. Whether it be historical figures like Martin Luther King, like Malcolm X, etc., and all those type of people. Obviously, like I said, my parents are the number one influences. Everybody else come after that.
Yeah.
My grandfather is a close second, and there are many other people. Like I said, Sensei Smith, Kevin Smith, though he looks younger than me,
Yeah.
right, has a part in that in his own way.
Yeah.
But A.P. Turo, Lolis Eli, Reverend Halsey, who was the Reverend at St. John's Institutional Baptist Church, found out that he allowed individuals from the civil rights movement to congregate there and do things. I didn't know that as a little boy, but I was actually growing up in a context of struggle there. So there are so many individuals who collectively have influenced my life, but the early trajectory was Paul Robeson.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Sometimes you might read a book and you come across a certain character. It might be a fictional or non-fictional, but you come across a certain character. I found that, I remember reading Miseducation of the Negro, and it kind of changed my trajectory. It kind of made me rethink the way I was. I was just a football player at that point. That's all I saw myself as an athlete. And it kind of made me say, well, are you a clown? Who are you? Are you a man? Can you really call yourself a man? So I kind of get what you mean by that. A lot of times what we see on TV are clownish figures.
Right.
Obviously we are, led by rap, and rap wasn't initially a bad thing, obviously, but now it's just about, I don't know what it's about because I don't listen to it anymore. But like you say, the people that influence you can influence you for the good or for the bad. So, my next question is, what was it like, rebuilding New Orleans helping rebuild New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina? Just some small side story. I remember I was a freshman in high school when Hurricane Katrina hit, and I remember it being so much chaos when we were trying to leave the city. I didn't actually stay in the city when it hit, and my high school had 9 feet of water. I went to Jesuit High School, so we had 9 feet of water. When we got back, they had gutted the first floor. We had the privilege of still being able to go to school on the second, third, and fourth floor. And I know a lot of other institutions weren't able to get back and up and running. You had the situation with the mayor where obviously things were going on. Then he ended up getting indicted, and I have actually going to jail for some other things. It was chaos everywhere. It seemed like a lot of people moved, and it just seemed like in my eyes at that young age, like that New Orleans would never come back. It would never be the same. So, what was it like?
Well, it was a tough and intense time because we sat on the first city council seated post-Katrina New Orleans. So Hurricane Katrina 2005, 2006 I entered. I was 36 years old at that time. And it was hectic. I mean, folks were clamoring to get back. A lot of people had died. The stress associated with coming back, and you would hear stories about individuals who would come back, like elderly women, and they'll just die after because the stress of looking at what they worked so hard for. Then there was the issue about whether or not the city was going to be rebuilt and the struggle for that. So I was a part of that in a sense because we were still putting the pieces back together to rebuild New Orleans. Thankfully, I lived on the West Bank at that time, and so it didn't flood in Algiers at that time, but 80% of the city, including almost the entirety of the East Bank of the city, flooded at that time. So this whole atmosphere was a very, very stressful, very, very intense deal, but we managed to help to put some structures in place to cause the city to rebound in a way. And my understanding is now that it is 16 years later, the city is somewhere close to like 400,000 residents at this time. At the time of Hurricane Katrina, it was 454,000.
Yeah.
But the reality of the matter is New Orleans has been losing population since the 60s. At one time, we had over 600,000 individuals that lived in New Orleans. So New Orleans had been losing population. At the time of Hurricane Katrina, it was 454,000, and now it's just shy of 400,000 individuals 16 years later after Katrina.
So what do you think we were losing people?
Well, some of it was quote-unquote white flight out of the city. At some point, crime became an issue to some individuals. Some people just saw a better way of life in other places because there's so many regressive aspects of this beautiful city that we have. It's a very special place, but at the same time, the educational construct is a certain way. Sometimes Individuals just want a better way of and a more progressive way of living.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I've had opportunities to live other places, and nothing like quite feels like New Orleans. You know, I went to a wedding this past weekend in Dallas. One of my frat brothers was getting married. He's like, "Hey, man, you need to move out here." They was trying to convince me, but one, the food is very nasty, and I can't eat Mexican food all the time and steaks. But you're right. I think that New Orleans has a real opportunity to be a special place.
It is a very special place.
Yeah.
Very unique.
And I think that a lot of times what bothers me is that I see that, we aren't getting, different industries or things like that. I saw where Fort Worth had got the Amazon plant. And it's like, what are we doing out there in New Orleans East? What are we doing here? Maybe we could do this. Maybe we could, if I ride through Texas this month, I come back next month, it's going to look different because they're constantly building new things, constantly using some of that money. And I don't think they even have state tax, so it's like, some things you kind of want to see New Orleans doing, And, but, to say that Hurricane Katrina happened and you being 36, which is not very old to have that much pressure on you. I know from working in mental health that a lot of people were affected negatively by Hurricane Katrina still to this day.
Absolutely.
It was, obviously, from what I remember, it was one of the worst tragedies. First I remember 9/11, being young, and then you remember Hurricane Katrina. It was so close to home compared to 9/11, and it affected so many different people. So many people just scattered. And, New Orleans is a place with people that are very prideful in their city, and, it was just a sad thing to see. That our city went underwater like that, but it's very encouraging to see that we've made a lot of strides back, and like you said, that the population has improved and we have more people.
Mm-hmm.
So my final question for you is, what are some tips that will help young people in life achieve their goals?
Well, Einstein said that imagination is more important than knowledge, right? And what's so wonderful about the area that we're in, we talk about New Orleans, we have the most creative place in the world. And that creativity, that ability to dream, to understand that there's no limits to the trajectory that one can have, to get that understanding in the minds of young folks. Understand that God made you in a way that your potential is infinite. All you got to do is be disciplined and work hard towards your goals, and one can succeed. I think that at the time it clicked in my mind that the principles that my parents taught me were in me to do the things I need to do. Now at this particular point, I can see the big field now. Yeah. I can see and understand. So I would suggest to them as soon as they can to read as much as they can, to dream as big as they can, right? Mm-hmm. Because those dreams, anything that one can dream, one can create, right? I want them to remember what my parents told me. If I had the same book, Roni, I can compete with anybody in the world. What he's telling me was that you can do it no matter who you're up against, right? Yeah. And I would say that even in some cases, we're taught that we must be much better than folks around us because of the inequities in society that we have here. And I also like them to hear again what my mom taught me, that there's some people who are doing real good. They're good, they're doing good, they're great people, but they're not better than you. Yeah. No one is better than you. No one can do it like you do. Your DNA footprint is unique, and God wants you to achieve the very best of what He put into us. So I want young folks to understand that. I want them to get acclimated to the digital world, because the digital divide is real, right? We did not have the technology that is available now to do some of the things like you're doing. Your podcast can fly around the world. Immediately you can press a button, fly around the world, get acclimated, be focused on computer sciences in particular in the digital world, because it's extremely important. It's the way that the world is going. Mm-hmm. So some of those principles are some of the things that help me to understand that I am special just like other people are special. And I'll tell you this last story. When I was a little bitty boy, the single most important thing that my mom did for me that caused me to have the self-image that I have, she used to picked my hair when I was a little bitty boy. Like I remember this, like 5 years old. She put me between her legs and say, Roni. She would take my hair and pick out my little bush, and I can remember the fresh smell of my bush and pick it out. I had a little bush. She would pat my bush down. She would put the Jergens lotion on my face. She would put my warm tough skins on with my earth shoes on, put my little belt on, put a little money in my pocket, and say, Roni, I love you, and have a good day, right? I want to put something in your pocket so make sure you can take care of whatever you need to take care of. And what occurred to me, when people ask me, how did you become the person you are today? And this is for parents. My mom treated me like I was a fine piece of art every morning. And she sent me out into the world. And so when I was sent out into the world, I reflected the confidence and the love that she showed me. So therefore, when I reflected that love into the world, people treated me like I was somebody. And I've been on that trajectory ever since. So the parents need to understand how important it is to nurture your children, to give them experiences, exposures. And it does not always mean that you have a lot of money, because we didn't have a lot of money at that time. We didn't have those type of resources to the extent that we can just buy anything we want to buy. But the mindset that transformed me based upon what my parent did for me caused me to project the way I project today. And so I want to tell that to the parents and to the gentlemen relative to their sons and their daughters, etc., and to the kids, just as soon as you can figure out that thing that motivates you, work like your hair is on fire to make sure that becomes reality.
Yeah, I agree. It's rarely the things that my parents bought me that I remember. It's the time we spent together. It's the positive advice given to me. I agree with you. Like you say, it's like, you only people believe who you are based off what you show them.
Right.
So a lot of people, they may respect you if you give them a reason to respect you. But if you don't, if you walk with your shoulders slumped, if you walk with your head down, people are like, oh, he must not be important because he doesn't even think he's important.
Right.
And I like how you said that what your mother told you. And what it's called is like positive self-talk. What it is she's positively talking to you. And it took you probably talk to yourself that way, You see negative things going on, you're like, nah, that's not me. I already know I can compete. It's like, oh, this is just a setback. I already know. Don't worry, I still got that book. You gave me that book. I'm gonna achieve. You can't stop me. I got the book.
Right.
Even if you have any kind of, shortcomings, or you might fail a test when you're in law school, you're like, you know what? That's on me. I know better. I can do better.
And the most important principle that my dad taught me is to never quit. No matter what ahead of you, no matter what you're dealing with, always get up and swing another punch. Don't quit and keep touching them. He used to use the Muhammad Ali metaphor. He said, Roni, look, Muhammad Ali wasn't the hardest hitter, but he just kept touching them. He said, kept touching them. He said, Roni, just keep touching them. Just keep touching them. If you keep touching them, they're going to fall. Whatever you're doing, just keep touching it. Just keep touching it. Don't you give up. Don't you ever give up. That's the key. Don't give up on your dreams. Don't give up on don't give up nothing. Quit was not in him. He's just one of those type of people. Unto his death, he was not quitting. He was fighting back. Like he was dying, but he was pushing back. Like you put his hand, he'll push back. Right? And so that's that type of determination. My dad, when he had dementia, he was losing his mental facilities, but he still was talking about working. He still was talking about paying you if you did something for him. He was still saying thank you, and he was still pulling back, right, fighting. And so no matter what the situation is, no matter how grim it is, the key to the success is to never, ever give up.
Yeah, I agree with you. Never, you always got to just push yourself, because every day is another opportunity to better yourself.
That's right.
So, well, it's truly been an honor, having you on the show. And I'm glad that Sensei Kevin actually, helped me get this interview. Like you said, you have to use the resources that you have allotted to you. And, he's a great resource. Obviously, you're a great resource. They say that every great man is like a library when it comes to knowledge. And, from Sensei Kevin now to you, I've been, imparted a lot of wisdom. Has been imparted on myself just from hearing you speak and seeing the way you carry yourself. I'm going to take away a lot of great things.
Well, Peyton, I don't want you to underestimate your own worth and your own value. You put this paradigm in place that drew me to your studio to be able to talk about these things. Obviously, you are a great visionary, a great leader, a great man. I think you went to the wrong frat, but that's okay, you know. But obviously, you have huge, tremendous vision and life in you that I cannot wait to see exactly how your path takes you on, not only here but around the world. And now, as you know, with Brunson, I think his name is, who did the space flight, I'm looking for you to put your show on Mars and Pluto and whatever. So that's what I'm looking forward to with you, because you seem to be that type of man.
I truly appreciate it, and I'll shake your hand right on the camera. But that's all we have for today. Like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon. I hope that I get more interviews with great men like this. If you guys have anybody that you would like me to interview, anybody that you can get me in touch with, I will be sure to interview them. That's all I have today. Thank you.